The drawer stuck the same as always, but I didn't bother with the hip check this time. I just yanked it, hard, and the whole thing came loose so fast that half the rack tipped and a folded square of paper skidded across the counter and dropped off the edge, landing by my shoe like it had been waiting for exactly that kind of impatience. I figured it was a stray requisition slip. We lost those constantly. Techs stuffed them anywhere flat when their hands were full of tubes. I almost didn't even pick it up, but something about the fold caught my eye. Neat corners, pressed down hard, the kind of fold you do when you're trying to make a decision look smaller than it is. I opened it, standing right there at the bench, gloves still on, and there was my name at the top. Not written like a label, written like someone had practiced it first. No signature underneath, just 4 paragraphs about noticing things. How I hum off-key when I'm running a difficult panel. How I always eat lunch at 12:40 instead of noon because that's when the hallway's quiet. How I flinch a little every time the overhead paging system clicks on before an announcement. Small things, true things. Things I hadn't told anyone, because who tells anyone that they wait for the hallway to empty out just to breathe for 5 minutes? I stood there long enough that Priya, one of the phlebotomists, knocked on the doorframe and asked if I'd died. I folded the letter back along its own creases without meaning to and said something about a broken centrifuge, which wasn't even a lie I'd planned. It just came out, quick and easy, the way lies do when you're not ready to explain yourself yet. That night I couldn't stop running the list. 12:40. The paging system. The humming. Whoever wrote this had watched me the way you only watch someone if you've already decided you like them. And there's something about being seen that closely without your permission that feels less like flattery and more like a held breath you didn't know somebody else was holding too. I work overnight in hematology at a 500-bed hospital outside Cleveland, which means my universe is small. 6 or 7 people I actually cross paths with in the dead hours between 1 and 5 in the morning. Dr. Okafor, the hematology fellow, who reads slides at my station sometimes because the light's better there. Sal, the night shift phlebotomist who's been doing this since before I was born and calls everyone kid. 2 other lab techs, Denise and Marcus, who rotate through my shift more nights than not. And Whit. Whitman, technically, but nobody calls him that. A respiratory therapist who comes down for blood gases and always leaves a joke behind like a tip. I started watching all of them differently after that. Which, I'll admit, might have been the actual point of leaving an unsigned letter in the first place. Not confession so much as invitation, a way of making somebody look twice at people they'd stopped noticing. Dr. Okafor was the obvious guess, if I'm honest. Thoughtful, a little formal, the kind of man who says, "Excuse me" to a chair if he bumps it. He'd started leaving his slide reviews at my station instead of the one by the window, and I'd told myself it was about the light. 2 nights after I found the letter, he lingered while I logged a differential and said, "Apropos of nothing, you hum when you're concentrating." E-flat, mostly. Off-key, but committed to it. My stomach did something complicated. I asked him, careful, light, if he'd left me anything lately. He looked at me like I'd asked if he'd stolen the stapler. "Left you anything?" "No, should I have?" And I believed him, which was almost disappointing, because at least suspecting him had given me somewhere to put the feeling. Sal was next, mostly by elimination, though the idea of Sal writing a love letter made me laugh out loud in the break room, which he witnessed and did not appreciate. "What's funny, kid?" I told him nothing, and he squinted at me the way he does when he knows you're lying and has decided to let it go, this once. It was Marcus, actually, who cracked something open, though not on purpose. We were rerunning a coag panel around 3 in the morning, both of us punchy from the hour, and he said, offhand, "You always eat at 12:40. Sal and I have a bet about it." I stopped mid-pipette. "A bet?" "Yeah, whether it's on purpose or you just lose track of time." He said it easy, like it was nothing, like the 2 of them had been quietly cataloguing me on their coffee breaks for longer than I wanted to think about, and I didn't know whether to be charmed that people paid attention or unsettled that I'd been so unaware of being watched at all. I think that's the part that stayed with me since. How being known can feel like being held and being cornered in almost the same breath, and how much of the difference depends on who's doing the knowing. I didn't find out who wrote it from Marcus, or from anybody I confronted directly. I found out because of a slide. Whit came down for a blood gas around 4, same as most nights, made his usual joke. something about how the lab smells like the inside of a printer, and set his clipboard on the counter while he waited. When he picked it back up, a torn corner of notepaper slid out from underneath it, and before he noticed, I'd already seen the handwriting. Same slant, same press too hard fold, like even his throwaway notes couldn't help but be careful. I didn't say anything right away. I finished the gas, logged it, watched him leave with his usual two-fingered wave off the doorframe, and then I sat with it for the rest of the shift, turning over every conversation we'd ever had that I'd filed under. He's just friendly. The extra 10 minutes he spent at my station on nights, he had no gas orders pending. The way he'd once asked, out of nowhere, if the overhead paging system bothered me, and I'd said no, too fast, because admitting yes felt like admitting something else. I asked him straight, the next night, in the hallway after a code that had run long and left both of us wrung out and honest in that particular post-adrenaline way. "Did you write me a letter?" He didn't deny it. He also didn't say yes right away. He looked at the floor first, which told me more than words would have. "I wrote about 6 of them," he said. "That's the only one I meant to lose." I asked him why he never signed it, why he'd let it sit folded behind a specimen log for who knows how long instead of just saying something. And he said the thing that stuck with me since, the thing I keep turning over even now, that he figured if I read it and didn't feel anything, it was easier for both of us if I never knew whose handwriting to avoid afterward. Anonymous felt like the safer kindness. I've turned that over more than once. Whether it's braver to hand someone your name along with your feelings, or kinder to spare them the awkwardness of a name attached to something they might not want. I still don't know which one I'd choose, in his position. We didn't fall into anything dramatic after that. It was slower. A coffee after a shift that turned into 2, him walking me to my car at 6 in the morning under a sky that couldn't decide if it was night or day yet, the particular ease of 2 people who'd already been quietly cataloguing each other for months, finally admitting they'd noticed. 6 months later, we're still doing our overlapping shifts, still finding each other in the 4 a.m. lull, and I still keep that letter, refolded so many times now, the creases have gone soft as cloth, tucked behind a different drawer that doesn't stick nearly as much. Sometimes I think about how close I came to tossing it as scratch paper. How the whole thing hinged on a drawer that wouldn't shut right, and a decision he made in some quiet minute to write 4 true things about a woman he was too nervous to just ask to dinner. I don't know if I'd have had the nerve to do what he did, to put myself on paper and then let it sit, unclaimed, in the dark, hoping it landed somewhere gentle. Would you have signed it, or left it the way he did, and trusted that being known was enough, even without a name attached?